Aloha, everyone, and welcome to the Hawaii Department of Transportation's Priority Multimodal Network. This is our community meeting for Hawaii Island. I'm Natasha Soriano, the Multimodal Transportation Coordinator with HDOT's Office of Energy Security and Community Outreach. I'm joined by our Highways Administrator, Larry Dill, and Rachel Roper Noonan from our Highways Planning Branch. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few quick housekeeping items. This meeting is being recorded so that we can share it with others who aren't able to attend today. By staying in the session, you are consenting to being recorded. During the formal presentation, attendee microphones and cameras will be turned off so we can minimize background noise and keep the session running smoothly. Once we move into the Q&A portion, we will enable mics and cameras for those who would like to ask questions or share comments. If you have questions at any time, please feel free to add them to the chat and we'll address as many as we can during our discussion. With that, I'll turn it over to Highways Administrator Larry Dill.
All right, thank you, Natasha. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our presentation on our Priority Multimodal Network. Our goal tonight is to create a transportation system that is safer, more connected, more affordable, and better supports our community's way of life. Tonight, we'll share how this work aligns with statewide priorities and why your input is essential as we move into implementation. Next slide, please. So before we talk about where we're headed, I want to acknowledge the tremendous work that has already been done across our state to create safer, more walkable, and more connected communities. DOT, along with other state agencies and our county transportation partners, have spent years in investing in complete streets, safe routes to school, bikeways, sidewalks, and safety improvements. We wouldn't be where we are today without that strong foundation and the collaboration that has existed across agencies. For example, we work closely with county transit agencies where state highways are critical for bus service or multimodal connectivity. This partnership is essential to ensure transit can move efficiently and safely on our shared roadway networks. Hawaii also has dedicated community groups who have consistently shown up, provided input on transportation plans and projects, and pushed for safer streets. We've also begun implementing these multimodal plans in a very real way. Recent examples include the Ala Moana pedestrian bridge, which is now providing a safe walking connection over a major state route, and the build-out of the Leeward Bikeway on Oahu, which provides a separated miles-long path for people walking, rolling, and biking. These examples show that when we plan together and coordinate across agencies and communities, we deliver meaningful improvements that truly benefit our communities. Next slide, please. So the Priority Multimodal Network is a set of strategic projects on the state highway system designed to fill the most critical gaps in pedestrian, bicycle, and transit access across all islands. It is a focused approach to building safe, reliable options for how people move throughout Hawaii. This network builds on years of work from DOT, the counties, and many community partners. Rather than starting from scratch, it brings together existing bike, pedestrian, and transit plans into one clear, coordinated statewide implementation path. The goal is simple: focus our resources so key walking, biking, and transit connections are built sooner than originally planned. By aligning priorities across agencies, we can accelerate delivery and ensure our communities benefit faster. And although the network focuses on state highways, it is intended to connect with county facilities so people experience multimodal travel as one connected system, not separate pieces. We're structuring implementation in two phases: 5-year projects, which will begin construction by 2029, and 6 to 10-year projects planned for construction between 2030 and 2034. These investments expand access and opportunity, not only for Kama'aina and visitors, but especially for those who can't drive, don't have access to a car, or face the high cost of car ownership, including kupuna, keiki, and people with disabilities. Next slide, please. This multimodal work DOT has been doing is already grounded in state law. Hawaii Revised Statutes Section 264-142 requires the state to plan for and develop connected pedestrian, bicycle, and transit networks across all islands in coordination with the counties. What's different now is the DOT has entered into the Navahini Settlement Agreement, with which we've agreed to accelerate implementation of those plans and make significant sustained investments in multimodal infrastructure. It sets clear expectations not only to plan but to deliver the priority multimodal network, engage communities, and demonstrate annual progress. Next slide, please. Transportation is Hawaii's #1 energy consumer and one of the highest costs for our families. For many households, transportation is the second largest expense after housing. The priority multimodal network is one of the top strategies in DOT's energy security and waste reduction plan in order to reduce our dependence on imported fuels by giving people real alternatives to driving. It delivers on this by reducing fuel use through more travel choices, lowering household costs by making transit, walking, and biking realistic daily options, supporting healthier, more connected communities, and strengthening local resilience with walkable, transit-ready towns. In short, completing this network is one of the most impactful actions we can take to reduce energy demand and improve quality of life for Hawaii residents. And now I'll turn it over to Rachel Roper and her team at Highway Planning to dive deeper into the bike and pedestrian networks. Rachel.
Thanks, Larry. Yeah, so as Larry said, I'm Rachel Roper Noonan from the Highways Planning Branch. I oversee the Systems Planning section, which oversees our bicycle and pedestrian planning for the state highway system. So today I'll be going over the bicycle and pedestrian component of the settlement agreement. As Larry mentioned, one of the actions that HDOT must take, next slide. And next slide. Thank you. So as Larry mentioned, one of the actions that HDOT must take is to complete the pedestrian, bicycle, and transit networks in coordination with the counties with a goal of completing this work in 5 years. In line with that, we reviewed our existing bicycle and pedestrian program, the entire state highway system, and existing land use in consideration of the settlement. We also met with our county partners to ensure we looked at the entire transportation network holistically and took into consideration key connections between the state and county networks. Based on that, we identified projects, mostly from our existing bicycle and pedestrian program, that we will implement in the near term. In the next few slides, I'll dive into more details about all of this. I'll start by sharing more about our bicycle and pedestrian program, about the project identification and prioritization process, and then close by highlighting projects that are part of the proposed network. Next slide. So to start, here's some background on our bicycle and pedestrian program. Bike Plan Hawaii was first developed in 1977, and as of last year, we had 177 miles of bikeways on the state highway system. For the Big Island specifically, we have 11.1 miles. Next slide. Our nationally award-winning statewide pedestrian master plan was developed in 2013. On the Big Island, we have 20.23 miles of dedicated pedestrian facilities. Next slide. So now let's talk a little bit about the types of improvements the HDOT highways typically implements specifically for bicyclists and pedestrians. So these can include dedicated facilities. I'm sure you're all familiar with these: crosswalks, sidewalks, shared use paths, bike lanes, and sign shared roadways. We also do visibility improvements like pavement markings, lighting, advanced stop bars, curb radius adjustments, and curb bulb outs. We also do speed management like raised crosswalks, speed humps, and speed limit adjustments. We do crossing improvements like medians and pedestrian scrambles. And we also do non-infrastructure improvements like bicycle and pedestrian counts, education, and partnerships with enforcement. So an example of our education is our Motor Vehicle Safety Office, for example, had a contract with the Hawaii Bicycling League to offer e-bike classes. Next slide. Now let's talk about how we identify and prioritize our projects. Our approach is consistent with national best practices. It's data-driven, consistent with our Complete Streets policy and the US DOT, United States Department of Transportation, Safe System approach. It's also consistent with the settlement. So we're continually evaluating new needs. We don't wait to evaluate needs just when we formally update our plans every 5 to 10 years. Needs can be identified at any time, and they can be identified by the public or stakeholder groups. They can be identified by us here at our bicycle and pedestrian team or our districts or through maintenance. So once we're aware of a need, we review the existing conditions and available data, and we develop a proposed project. As I mentioned before, as part of the settlement evaluation, we went back through our list of proposed projects as well as existing conditions like land use and just took a really thorough look at the entire state highway system. Because we have limited resources in terms of staff to design and manage projects, limited materials, limited contractors, and limited funding, we use this criteria shown on this slide to prioritize our projects for implementation. We use this to develop our short-term implementation plan for the bicycle and pedestrian part of the multimodal network. So these criteria include safety. That can be in terms of crash history and traffic stress. So speed limits and volumes of cars and freight vehicles on the road that contributes to traffic stress. We also look at connectivity, mobility, and accessibility. That can be gaps in the system, making sure we have multimodal connections to transit or other places, and then access to key destinations. For this specific evaluation, we made sure to pay special attention to schools, libraries, employment centers, and parks, among other things. Of course, we also consider equity. We especially focus on those who might be more reliant on the bicycle and pedestrian modes. These can be areas with higher concentrations of youth or kupuna, areas where people might not have access to vehicles, or areas with higher concentrations of poverty. We also look at greenhouse gas potential. For this round, we specifically looked at roadways with higher traffic volumes that connect to employment centers or have a lot of tourist destinations. We're looking for locations that could attract a lot of vehicle travel. And we also look at stakeholder support. So if the project is requested by the community or one of our partners at the counties, what the county agencies request it, or if it's recommended by a stakeholder group. And then lastly, we look at feasibility. For this criteria, we're focusing on things that would make the project take really long or be much more difficult to implement. So for example, if we need to buy land, if we need to acquire land, if we would impact adjacent properties or utilities, if we would need a new bridge structure, these types of things just add a lot more complexity to projects. Next slide. Our proposed project list. We have 73 projects totaling over $300 million. Next slide. Specifically for the bicycle network, we have just under 24 miles of proposed bicycle facilities statewide. That's made up of 20 projects comprised of totaling $45.1 million. Specifically for the Big Island, almost 9 miles of that are just for the Big Island from 6 projects and $10.2 million. So if you see on the slide, I've separated shared use paths from other types of bicycle facilities since shared use paths are shared by pedestrians. So I didn't want to have those totals double counted when we talked about the pedestrian network. So if we add these proposed miles to the existing bike network, that would bring total miles of bikeways up to 226.87 miles. And then specifically for the Big Island, Hawaii Island, that would be 25.36 miles. Next slide. And so this map shows the locations of our proposed bicycle facilities. The lines that are thicker indicate the proposed projects, and then the other lines are our existing network. So I understand it might be a little bit hard to see, or not just a little, but a bit hard to see on this slide. But Natasha, in her presentation later, will be going over how you can look at our proposed network online, and you'll be able to see it a lot more clearly. Next slide. So for the pedestrian network, we have 16.15 miles of sidewalks proposed. That's over 28 projects costing $110.6 million. Specifically for the Big Island, we have 0.83 miles made up of 4 projects costing $2.3 million. For shared use paths, we have just under 26 miles, 26 projects totaling $146.7 million. Specifically for Hawaii Island, we have 5.3 miles proposed, 5 projects totaling $23.1 million. So that would bring the total pedestrian mileage up to 203, just under 204 miles statewide, and then specifically for Hawaii Island, 26.36 miles on the state highway system. Next slide. So again, this is just our map showing the proposed network and how it connects with the existing system. So in the next few slides, we're going to start talking about specific proposed projects. So keep in mind that these projects were identified at a planning level assessment, so detailed scoping and site visit have not been done yet, and design has not started for most of these projects. So design will be done as part of the project delivery process, and at that point, scope will start getting refined, added, revised. Specific details about the project, like the type of facility that is most appropriate for the location, potential speed limit adjustments, potential intersection configuration changes, etc., that will all be finalized through the design and project delivery process. Next slide. All right, so this slide, so on this map, we're just showing our proposed network. And so the thicker lines are the projects we'll be highlighting, and then the other lines are just the other projects. The Big Island, I think, as we've mentioned, has 15 projects totaling $35.6 million. So once completed, we'll have just about 25 miles of bikeways and about 26 miles of pedestrian facilities. Next slide. Okay, so the first project we have is the first proposed project we're highlighting is in the Hilo area. It's about 1.89 miles of bike lanes along Kanoilehua Avenue between Kamehameha Avenue to East Pu'ainako Street. The southbound bike lane exists, so we're focusing on the northbound travel in this proposed project. It should be starting design very soon, and the primary needs it addresses are safety, connectivity, mobility, and accessibility, equity, greenhouse gas, and stakeholder support. So if you remember from the previous slide of our criteria, this one hits all of them. It does have some potential challenges, as most projects do. These include narrow right-of-way. So we would likely do a traffic study to help us better understand what alternatives we have to include the bike lane. We would also need to further evaluate the location of utilities during scoping and design. And then also, the speed limit is 35 miles per hour, I believe. So we would want to evaluate perhaps if we could do a buffered bike lane or maybe lower the speed limit. The traffic study would help us, evaluate all these considerations. So if we were able to complete the improvements within the existing right-of-way, the project could cost it as low as $1 million. But that will be determined once we better understand the type of improvement we're going to do. But at this point, we're proposing bike lanes. Next slide. So in these images, you can see there are some sidewalks in some areas of this corridor, and then you can also see the median and the shoulder. Those vary, the widths of those vary. So it's just a little bit more details about our proposed project area. Next slide, please. We'll move further south for the next proposed project. It's a shared use path for about 0.61 miles on Hawaii Belt Road from Mountain View Elementary to Nicholas Road. This project would connect the residential area to the elementary school. It's estimated to start design in 2027 and cost about $1 million. The primary needs it addresses are safety, connectivity, mobility, and accessibility, equity, and stakeholder support. Potential challenges are the existing guardrail, utilities, and the bridge. And then also the shoulder width varies, so we'll have to confirm our available right-of-way. Next slide. And so, yeah, as you can see here, these are just some images to show more about the project location. You can see some of the utilities and guardrails we'll have to consider during the design process. Next slide. The next proposed project is in Waimea, a shared use path for about 1 mile along Kauai Road from Lindsay Road to Kahabai Street. The community requested this project. It's estimated to start design in 2032 and cost about $7.2 million. The primary needs it addresses are safety, connectivity, mobility, and accessibility, equity, and stakeholder support. Potential challenges are the existing guardrail, utilities, and parking along this area, and also that the project area that we'll be working with wanting to put the shared use path is likely going to be outside the existing paved area. Next slide. So in these images, you can see the guardrail and some of the utilities we'll have to be considering during design. Next slide. The next two proposed projects are in Kona, both on Kuakini Highway. This one here is 2.85 miles from Lako Street to Henry Street. It's anticipated to start design very soon and estimated to cost about $2.6 million. The primary needs it addresses are all of them that I had covered before: safety, connectivity, mobility, and accessibility, equity, greenhouse gas, and stakeholder support. Potential challenges include guardrail, utilities, and grading. The speed limit is also between 35 to 40 miles per hour, so we'll have to consider how to work with that, perhaps providing a buffered bike lane if there is available right-of-way. Next slide. So in these images, you can see there's an existing bike lane that ends at Kalani Street, and then also the guardrail that we'll have to work with. Next slide. So this one continues down Kuakini Highway, 1.75 miles from Lako Street to King Kamehameha, the third road. It's anticipated to start design very soon and estimated to cost about $527,000. The primary needs it addresses are also all of them: safety, connectivity, mobility, and accessibility. Similar to the previous proposed project, there are a lot of destinations along this corridor, as many of you probably know. Also, we're looking at equity, greenhouse gas, and stakeholder support. Potential challenges are similar: guardrails, utilities, grading, and then in some areas, the speed limit. Next slide. Yeah, so you can see a little bit more further south down the corridor. Next slide. All right, so this is our last proposed project we'll be highlighting. It's in Puna, a bicycle facility for 1.1 miles on Keaupahoa Road from Volcano Road to Keau Bypass. So on the maps, we have it as a proposed bike lane, but I put it here a little more general, as you probably noticed, because we want to look at it in a little more detail to see what bicycle facility would be most appropriate for the context here. So we're still working to evaluate this project a little bit more. Yeah, so it's supposed to start design very soon. Process is coming up. The primary needs it addresses are safety, connectivity, mobility, and accessibility, equity, and stakeholder support. The challenges are, quite similar to some of our other projects: available right-of-way, utilities, and guardrail. Next slide. So you can see a little bit more about the project location. Yeah, so next slide. I'll be turning the presentation back over to Natasha. Yeah, thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you, Rachel. Before we move on to the transit network, I just wanted to acknowledge that this has been a years-long work working with each county. We do have on the call, or sorry, not the call, on the webinar, Melanie DeMello from the County of Hawaii Department of Public Works and Zachary Burgum from the Mass Transit Agency. And they'll be available to answer questions. Sorry, there's still some more. Can we get the slideshow back up? Oh, what happened to the slides? Yeah, and then we can move on to the next slide as we transition into the transit network. And then one more acknowledgement. This past year, our Office of SCP and Highways worked to get full electric buses for all counties, as pictured here. And you may start seeing them or have been riding on them. Next slide, please. For our transit network, there are 39 proposed projects statewide, and we're looking at 4 bus stop locations here on Hawaii Island. Next slide. And we developed the transit network by taking lead from the counties, recognizing that there is already ongoing planning efforts and that statewide, our highway system plays a critical role in how transit operates, especially for the neighbor islands, as like on the Big Island, these become the backbone of these transit routes. So our planning process focused on listening first. We met with each county to see what the greatest needs were with regards to safety, accessibility, comfortable stops, and where small upgrades could be made for bus service to be more reliable and more attractive for users. Next slide, please. This map shows the current transit routes along the island and the location of inbound and outbound bus shelters. These represent I believe, existing stops. So this would be to create a bus shelter and bus pullouts to make it more safer to be waiting for the bus along our highways. Next slide, please. Like Rachel said, a lot of the locations here are shown represent proposed new or relocated bus stops along the highway. Our goal is for the neighbor islands to produce bus shelters and bus pullouts where we can. That requires more preliminary engineering that has not been done yet. So a full site evaluation and traffic evaluation will be underway soon. So really, we're just determining the feasibility of the locations that we're proposing. Next slide, please. So in total, our multimodal network is looking at 112 priority multimodal projects statewide. That is a $354 million investment over the next 10 years, with 73 proposed projects on the bicycle and pedestrian network and 39 projects on the transit network. Next slide, please. And importantly, we would like to hear from you. These are little clips from our website, and I will go through our website now to show where you can find our maps and other interactive features. For our website, we have a small intro. Here in community meetings, we'll have our recorded meeting available for you to view. If you'd like to view our other island meetings, you can view them here. And there, if you happen to be on Oahu, we are also rebroadcasting Oahu's meeting on Olelo. Our priority multimodal network maps are powered by ArcGIS. Here I've zoomed into the island of Hawaii. And as you can zoom in, our purple, we can look at the legend by clicking on this link here. Our projects have been divided into two categories. We're looking at the first 5 years from 2024 to 2029 in solid, and our dash lines are going to be starting construction in 2030 to 2035. You can also click on these to see a little bit more information, length of the project and routes, cross streets, estimated costs can be found here as well. And this is similar for our transit network. Again, we can zoom in. The purple lines represent the existing transit routes. You can click on this legend here, and there's quite a bit of symbology. So if you can scroll down, you can see the full legend. If you're also ArcGIS savvy, you can click on this button here and it'll open it up in ArcGIS Online. Another point of interest may be to come here and download the list of projects if you'd like to see it all in one place. And lastly, at the bottom of the web page, we do have our submit a comment form. This is also powered by ArcGIS. So there's a little inset scrolling here. And as you scroll down, you can fill in all your information. The things that are starred are required. And if you can zoom in, you can drop a pin anywhere that you have any suggestions, comments, or concerns. And it's just as simple as clicking. It'll produce coordinates so that we can know what you're talking about. Alternatively, you can also submit feedback by contacting us at h.multimodal@hawaii.gov. There you can give us any other feedback, like pictures or other descriptions that may help. So with that, this concludes the formal presentation. At this time, we have Laura Ka'akua from the Office of Energy Security and Community Outreach, and she will be helping to facilitate our question and answer portion. She'll be monitoring the chat if you want to drop a question there, and she'll call on you, or you can also raise your hand and she'll acknowledge you that way as well.
Thanks, Natasha. Thanks everyone for being here again. We have our first question from Tam Hunt regarding costs. Tam, would you like to unmute and come on video and ask your question?
Sure. Thank you, Laura, and everyone else at HDOT. I'm with the Hawaii EV Association and getting up to speed on the multimodal priority plans, et cetera. And I've been engaged somewhat with the climate change mitigation plan development process. And I'm sure, like a lot of people, I'm surprised at the costs you're sharing for pedestrian and bike paths. Can you maybe share a bit more as to why these cost estimates are so high at this point? Or do you plan to go to bid to get the lowest cost? Is that a good chance to get lower costs when you go to bid?
Thanks,
Okay, so
Tam. We'll go to Larry Dill.
sorry, I'll take a crack at that. Thanks for your question. We are also impressed by the cost because we are planning on applying a lot of resources to this effort. Those costs are largely planning level cost estimates based on preliminary information that we have about the scope of the projects and based on the construction costs we are currently experiencing when we get our bids. We absolutely will put all of these projects out to bid and they will be awarded to the lowest qualified bidder for each project. But it's a reflection pretty much of what the costs that we are seeing today when we're bidding out our projects.
Thanks for that, Larry. Just to take the one example that really stuck out, could you, or I think her name was Rachel, maybe provide a little more detail on why the Waimea project in particular is estimated at $7 million for a little more than half a mile? I guess, I don't know what goes into those kind of costs, but I guess it does seem very high.
Thanks, Tam. Rachel, do you want us to bring up that slide or are you able to answer?
I was just going to bring it up on my computer just to take a look at it. Yeah, so it's about 1 mile. I believe some of the cost is from the potential challenges we might be predicting. But we will, once we go out with the design scoping, I'll be updating the cost estimate. And then once we go through the design process, we'll also update the cost estimate, so as we go through the process, if there are changes that we find. I think, those are probably most of it. I would have to, I didn't put together the cost estimates myself, so I'm sorry I don't have the real specifics, but if you wanted, you could also contact us and we could talk story more after the meeting.
Thank you. And one more follow-up question, if I may. In terms of the scoped projects, are you choosing the projects and the extent of the projects based on an allocated budget beforehand? Or are you choosing the projects and then estimating the cost? Because I'm asking because if it is the former, it'll be great, of course, to see more projects and more miles for the same budget, and that would, of course, weigh heavily in terms of finding lower costs. It's not, it's an obvious point, but I want to just kind of clarify what is your approach on that?
Thanks for the question, Tam. Larry, do you want to answer that one? Oh, sorry, Larry, you would have to come off mute.
Sorry, so good follow-up question. We have, this is one of many priorities we have at DOT. And so all of our projects from all of our programs, this being one of them, are funneled through what we call our mid-range transportation plan. And that looks at all our projects and tries to weigh the priority of projects of different scope against one another in order to come up with a prioritized list for funding those projects for the following year and then to get into our 4-year statewide transportation improvement program. And also to figure out how we're going to use capital improvement program funds from the state as well as Federal Highway Administration funds, because most of these projects we will probably fund with 80% federal funds. So there's a lot of work that goes into prioritizing all the projects against one another, and it's pretty challenging when you have projects of different scope. You have a paving project versus a multimodal project versus a drainage project, and we've got to try and weigh the importance and the necessity of those projects against one another when we come up with priorities for funding. The Navahine Settlement Agreement, which was mentioned a couple times tonight, has raised the priority of a lot of the multimodal programs versus the other programs. So we are accelerating priorities we already had in place, but making them now a higher priority. So these types of projects are being prioritized more than they were in the past. That's kind of a roundabout answer to your question, but there are a lot of things that go into prioritizing how we allocate our funds.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Tom, for the question. I'll go now to Dave Mullenix and
People
just
online, it's only 2 people.
Hello,
uh,
hi. My name's Dave Molnix, Greenpeace Hawaii. Just a couple of questions. Bike paths here on Oahu. We have these, the bike impression on the street. It's in the middle of the street, and I'm trying to. Are these considered, part of your bike lane project because they're not safe, and I'm seeing them in different places. Is this counted as part of? Your bike lanes, or is this something you're proposing? But I mean, right now, if I'm a bike rider and I'd see it, oh, this is probably a safe place to ride, but it's right in the middle of the street. So I'm trying to figure out, it doesn't seem to work out to me. How does that work?
Thanks, Dave. You're asking about whether any of the projects on our planned priority multimodal network will be bike lanes that are sandwiched between lanes of traffic. Is that right?
No, they're
In the middle of
they're
the
not
street?
sandwiched
No.
between. They are there's the bike symbol right in the middle of the street. There's no, there's no delineation. It's a
Okay, I
yeah.
understand.
Are
Yeah.
you
And so there's
referring
no
to maybe
place, say, if I'm a bike rider, I'm right in the middle of the street riding my bike. Is that what I'm supposed to be doing? Is that considered a safe bike lanes?
Sure, Rachel?
to Sharrows, where it's considered a more shared lane, shared space. So none of the projects that we're proposing are Sharrows on the state highway system, primarily because of the type of roadways we have. They're a little bit higher speed. So typically, I think Sharrows are used at more lower speed facilities. It's lower volume. So a little bit different than the state highway system.
Okay, so that's not counted as part of your bike system.
And not in any of
Oh.
the projects in the priority multimodal network.
Okay, and then a couple quick questions. So I know that the youth were wanting free bus passes, and I know that there are free bus passes, I think, on Hawaii Island and on Maui already. And I think that they've renewed or the process, I think it's on Maui, for free bus passes. Now, our goal here really is to cut down on carbon emissions. And on Oahu, there's, I think the amount we get in fares is $53 million a year for buses. And the legislature last year gave $1 billion tax cut to the wealthiest. So they transferred money that should have been going into projects that you guys are doing to tax cuts for the rich. We're trying to go to the legislature to ask for some of that money back, but that's like 53 million is just like 5% of that $1 billion giveaway to the rich. And so I guess what I'm saying is that if you just gave free bus passes to everybody, that would get like hundreds of thousands of cars off the road almost immediately or very quickly. And so I know the youth are already working on that, and you got it going on a couple of islands. So expanding that out to include more people will cut carbon emissions a lot more quickly than just about anything else. And I'm wondering if you guys are looking at that at all. And that's a question, because that's definitely would impact it. If I know I can get on the bus for free, and then you can do it for 3 years or so, and then start raising the price of the buses again. But they're already giving away this $1 billion to the rich, so the money's there. It just has to be asked for. So have you considered expanding the free bus pass? And I think you folks are involved in some of these free bus passes maybe on Maui. I'm not sure.
Sure. Actually, I can maybe answer that question. And then if there's anyone from the county that wants to give an update on the county's free bus service, please go ahead. I do know that there are folks, including our Hawaii Youth Transportation Council that's supported by HDOT, that are planning to advocate for statewide free youth transit access in the next legislative session. And what we have heard from the county is that they would really appreciate some support at the state level to basically subsidize them in providing that continued free youth access across the board. I don't know if there's anything that someone from the county wants to add, but if so, please feel free to speak up. And if not, we can move on to our next question.
Yeah, we have
Just-
Zachary Burgum from MTA.
Okay, great. Zach,
Yeah,
anything to add?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Zach. Thanks.
Yeah, Zach Burgum here, administrator for Mass Transit. So yeah, Dave kind of, hit one good point there. And, we've been fare free for a little while, a couple of years, and we extended it to December 31st of 2028. We got a ton of cars on the road, especially when you think about Hamakua Coast, when you think of Puna, the east side of the island, those early morning rush hours, or even at the end of the day when people are leaving work, kids are getting off school, people are trying to go home, the roads are packed, you know what I mean? So Dave kind of hit a really good point, and that's kind of also one of our goals, because the transit business is not at the end of the day, it's not a money maker. The last time that we did collect fares, we collected for fixed route, it was $376,000 in revenue for 1 year. That's it, $376,000 for fixed route in the 1 year. So, so, when, a couple of years ago when we did go fare free, that was the hopes, is to get more riders. And so we have been, so ridership has been increasing and it's been going good. So we are very happy to extend that out for a couple more years as well.
Great, that's great to know. And last question, what about charging stations? That's the biggest problem for EV folks, especially on Hawaii Island, is where am I going to charge my car? I know Tesla and some of the other folks are setting up charging stations in various areas. So are you folks doing anything at all to expand electric vehicle charging stations? Because that's the biggest detriment, especially if people live in apartments or just that, there's such a great distance between where they can get, there's nothing nearby, so we need to have more charging stations. So is there any focus on getting more charging stations out there? Because that would, once again, get more gas-powered vehicles off the road. That's my last question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's
Sure.
right. I agree
Thanks,
with you.
Dave. Oh, sorry.
Uh,
I just want to go question by question, and then we'll come. Oh, Zach, were you hoping to? Was that you, Zach? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I
Was
didn't
it-
want to jump on your toes there. I'll wait until you're done.
Okay. Well, at some point I can refer over to Larry Dill to share what HDOT's doing, but we agree with you, Dave, that it is a huge gap to be filled, is the public EV charging stations as identified in our energy security and waste reduction plan. HDOT can't do all of the charging stations that Hawaii needs statewide, but we are committed to fulfilling our NEVI charging station plan. And Larry Dill, our highways administrator, would you want to share a little bit about that?
Actually, I'm not real familiar with that effort, but to speak of that a little, DOT has taken advantage of the NEVI program. I think that's the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, and it's a federal program where funding was available for exactly that purpose, was to make additional charging stations installed and available to the public. And we have installed, I don't know the number, but several around the state to date. And I'm not sure, unfortunately, that the current federal administration is supportive of that program. So we are looking to seek other ways to fund that. But I agree with you, Dave. It's an important feature that we need to continue to pursue, and we're working on that.
Well,
Thanks,
all of you
Larry.
so much for your efforts.
And I'll put information about our NEVI program in the chat, and I'll go to to Zach for a quick comment, and then we'll go to James Kong for his question. Zach, anything to add?
Yeah, Dave, we're in the process of working with HECO to get a couple charging stations at our base yard in Hilo that will be used for those battery electric buses. Kind of like Natasha already talked about, all the islands, they got 4 battery electric buses. And so we've been slowly putting ours into operation, but, also working with HECO to get 2 chargers installed at our base. And years from now, after you kick it down the road in years to come, we're also talking about charging stations at our transit hubs around the island as well when we do bring those online. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Zach. We'll go next to James Kong.
Hi, my question is about the old service station in Waimea on Malamala Hoa Highway and Lindsay Road. Is the state planning to purchase that property and widen the radius of the turn for the truckers? Because most of the shipping that comes to Hawaii Island comes through Kauai High and it's being trucked to Hilo. Now, to me, that doesn't make sense because we're just wasting tons of gas and that doesn't really get to the reduction of carbon fuels because the trucks are basically the worst way to transport goods. Instead of increasing the trucking through Waimea and all along the Hamakua coast, how about if we build a better way of getting goods to Hilo, like installing container cranes at Hilo Harbor so ships can come in instead of barging it. And that way, we would save a lot of money because the ship would hold hundreds of containers rather than we have hundreds of trucks going from Kauai High to Hilo every day. And also that roundabout right after Lindsay Road, going down to Kauai High Road, I noticed that you guys are widening the lane for the truckers coming from Hilo to go to Kauai High, but you're not widening the bridge at that intersection just prior to it's actually on Lindsay Road, but it just, if you widen the bridge, then it'll reduce some of the traffic because cars trying to do, there's 3 lanes on that side of the road going, one to Hamakua, one to South Kona or Kona itself, and one going to Lindsay Road. But yeah, I mean, you guys are planning all of these things, but what about relocating the bus stop and not installing sidewalks, crosswalks in the area of the roundabout? I mean, it should be like 100 feet away at least, not 25 feet away, because that way the drivers have to look constantly for pedestrians and bus stops and things like that. It just creates a big traffic hazard, and traffic is terrible right there in that intersection right now. If you do all of these things with the roundabout, it'll get even worse.
Thanks, James. I'm not I know you had a few different points here, and we didn't plan to have someone from Harbors here, but whatever questions we can't answer now, we will pass along to the right department. And so I'll just turn to our team of folks from Hawaii Department of Transportation and the county. Does anyone have any part of James's comments that you could respond to? I think there's a suggestion about Hilo Harbor and being able to have a crane to bring in goods there rather than trucking across the island, and then some suggestions for Kauai High infrastructure.
Oh, we should what you call have container cranes at all the ports, not just Honolulu. That way we could lower our transportation costs and all of that, because what is happening is, we send all the goods to Honolulu, then it comes back to here, and Young Brothers has a monopoly on that. That's why we just had that big race. So if we have container cranes, other companies could just haul the containers and go to the harbor in Hilo and Kauai High and Lanai and Molokai and Kauai and just unload, and we wouldn't have to go through Honolulu, because the way they stack containers on a ship, it's according to where they're stopping first. The ones that would have the containers unloaded first would be on the very top. And it'll go down the line, you know, but we're just wasting time. We're doing it like in the 50s, you know, we're using cargo nets basically for transportation of goods to the islands. And what it is just increasing costs because we're paying for fuel to go to Honolulu and back to Hilo. Instead of just going from the mainland or a foreign country to Hilo. It's just wasting money and fuel and time and everything.
Thanks, James. Let's see, Larry, do you have any response, or would you just like us to share with Harbors?
Yeah, I think, James, thanks for your comment. You know, we're transcribing this whole event tonight, and as Laura mentioned, we don't have folks from Harbors here that can specifically address that. But all of your comments will be taken seriously. We appreciate them, and we'll follow up them with the appropriate divisions and departments at DOT.
Thank you, James. We'll go next to Meredith Spiker. Would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. Thank you. Mahalo. And thanks for the presentation and everything that's been done. I just wanted to ask the question because when I think of networks, I think of maybe a little bit more connectivity between communities and to special places or just public places. And so working a lot with different groups in in various communities, oftentimes there'll be really great ideas or kind of getting to the point of the cost of things. Maybe there's areas where there could be easier solutions. But anyways, if communities or groups or Hawai'is have like a passion project or an idea, what is the best way, and they're not on the list now, what's the best process that folks can go through to get them potentially on the list or at least considered in some way? Are there special steps that people can take so that they can be empowered as well? Thanks.
Sure. I know Rachel talked about the ongoing process of community input. Rachel, do you want to give a response first?
Sure. So of course, as you know, Natasha and Laura have been mentioning, you can use the website Natasha was showing to help provide comments, but you can always just reach out to us at our bicycle and pedestrian team at any time, whether it be tomorrow or next year, next month, whatever, 10 years from now. And then we can, once you point out, the locations you're thinking about, we'll evaluate them and, try to get them on the list.
So would that be just, how do people reach out to you or to the team? Because I think some groups I know have, and I'm not sure if it gets lost or what happens. So just for better, I guess, transparency, the online is great, but it just seems like you comment and then you don't hear back. So if there's a good way for communities to get some feedback, or okay, just send an email.
Or you can call me. Right now, our bicycle and pedestrian coordinator position is vacant. So I'm helping to be the lead to help, get the first comments, and then, we split the role amongst our team. So you're welcome just to reach out to me at any time. We can set up even a Teams meeting if you think that's easier to walk through the locations, on a map or something. We can do that, definitely. And then also we do have times where we formally update, the plans, and sometimes we have surveys and, other types of community involvement. So, we can, right now we haven't had, but, we can start collecting like an email list. When we have done our pedestrian master plan update, we had friends of the ped plan, and we would email all the friends whenever we had a community engagement opportunity. So we can start putting together a list like that too, perhaps, and we can put you on that for actual formal opportunities, but you can just reach out to me at any time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel, and thanks, Meredith, for your question. I'll go next to Kelly Hudick. Kelly, I know you put a question in chat, but do you want to come on video and unmute and be able to ask directly?
Yeah, and some of it was just sort of questions about sort of easy fixes, like crosswalks on some of the intersections, that maybe make things more pedestrian friendly that aren't necessarily like build outs or, would take a lot of kind of planning and things like that. The one that I thought of specifically was like Huliko and Queen Kaahumanu Highway. There's an intersection or a crosswalk before and after that intersection, but there's no crosswalk at that intersection. And it leads from like a kind of a commercial area, like Pine Tree Cafe is one of the spots there, and right across is a neighborhood and a really popular surf spot and a park that's down there. So things like that are, maybe a little bit easier ways to kind of make things more accessible for cyclists and pedestrians. Are those opportunities too that can be looked at to increase the, multimodal network on the island?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. That's that's really a specific one, right? I think we can all envision that particular intersection that you just described. So you're definitely flagging it for us tonight, but anything to add, Rachel?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly, for those suggestions. So for this effort in particular, we really focused on expanding and filling gaps in the network itself. But of course, we're also looking at those kinds of quicker, smaller scale improvements as well. So feel free to send us your list if you want. My email is in the chat, and we can take a look at each of those locations. But for now, we have the one you put in there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Rachel. I'll go now to Gunnar. Do you want to unmute and come on video and ask your question?
Yes, I just, as it was raised before, I just want to also point out as an electric car driver myself and living here in Kona and going to Hilo every now quite often. I just wanted to also raise that how disappointing the charging infrastructure is here on the island. There's literally no real fast chargers, and Hilo itself has like no chargers in the downtown area at all. There's literally none at all whatsoever. Also, like I think I raised at some point the point to the mayor's office that on the near the training facility on Settle Road on the playground area there, that would be a great spot halfway between Kona and Hilo to have some charging infrastructure there. For all those folks that don't have like fancy electric cars, just something that gets you barely to Hilo. So I can go back safely. So just wanted to raise that our charging infrastructure here on this island is really problematic and lacking. So hopefully you can address those in the coming years.
Yeah, thanks for that feedback and pointing out where the island is really in desperate need of those charging stations. I just put in chat our state NEVI charging plan. And so you'll be able to see some of the planned sites that HDOT is working on. And this won't include, things that other folks like potentially HECO or private developers or the county are planning on installing. But our charging sites are along highways and are the fast charging type. And so those will hopefully be able to fill a couple critical gaps where there's just a lack of all charging stations right now. So yeah, really appreciate your comment, Gunnar.
Okay, oh cool, thank you.
Thanks. I'll go next to Margaret. Margaret, do you want to unmute and come on video to ask your question or give a comment? Okay, I know Margaret's hand's raised, but she may be having some trouble coming on video and unmuting. Is there anyone else who has a question or comment? Okay, how to unmute. Okay, sure, I can walk you through that, Margaret. So you're going to look for the microphone icon, and it should say MIC under it. And then there's a little arrow next to it. You're going to click on that and try to unmute that way. Another way is you can just write your comment or your question in the chat and I can read it for you. Yeah, Margaret, there should be a little icon that looks like
Okay, I got it.
Oh, there. Yes, great.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple things. I don't know if you're looking at sort of mini transit hubs. I know I was on the county council before and sort of looking at Waimea and Keau and looking at centers sort of where all of these, bus and pedestrians and bikes and everything sort of hubs around there. And so just bringing that up. And I just want to make sure that you're really connecting in with the county. I look at Waimea and I worked on acquiring a number of corridors for trails and paths that I have no idea if anyone would ever do them, such as through Parker School land and other places. But I also want to mention looking at sort of historic trails. When we were doing the South Kohala CDP, we worked on sort of putting on trails like where the Army came up from Kauai and where that trail was and how, different trails sort of that are sort of major Hawaiian ancient trails and have other historic values. So I just want to mention that and really coordinating as much as possible with the county. And I do want to underscore what James Kong said about trucks. I mean, Waimea or from Kauai to Hilo is just a massive truck lane. And if one were to remove that, you would address many different aspects. But if companies find it right now, they find it cheaper to bring everything to Kauai and then truck it all and then undermine basically the quality of life and the safety of everybody, going along there. So anyway, those are just a few things, but I don't know to what extent you're sort of looking at coordinating as much as possible with other groups and with the county and also with, hiking groups. We have a state law that in theory that there's just as there are rights of way to the ocean, there are rights of ways to the mountains across state land where the highway connects and goes and connects across leased state land. So just trying to get working with all different groups that have overlapping interests. And thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you, Margaret. I think your first point was about transit hubs. And so maybe I'll go first to Zach, if you don't mind, and then see if Natasha has anything to add in terms of county coordination.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. And thanks, Margaret. Zach Burgum here again, administrator for transit. But yeah, transit hubs are pretty much, they're going to be definitely key for, the operations with getting folks around the island. And so currently our closest project to come right now is the Pahoa Transit Hub, which we've been talking with HDOT in completing categorical exclusion and those required environmental assessment and those things that are needed to move and progress toward the land acquisition phase. So that's kind of where we're at, preliminary stages with the Pahoa Transit Hub. And I'm with you when you mentioned KL Transit Hub, Waimea, Kona. Those are all kind of all in alignment because those are that's really key for the movement of people. And so that's definitely something that's on our radar at Mass Transit Agency, and we do communicate that often. So thank you, Margaret.
Mhm.
Thanks, Zach. Anything to add, Natasha?
Yeah, maybe just that our Office of State, our STP office, State Transportation Planning Office, does support our counties with that environmental, and so we are working closely with Zach folks in pursuing that Pahoa hub. But in general, for our network, we're looking really at how we can serve transit access along our highways. I think for the most part, MTA is, Zach, you can correct me if I'm wrong, switching to permanent stops and still transitioning from the flag stops. So hopefully these bus shelters along our highways will help with that.
Okay.
Thanks, Natasha. And I know, Margaret, you also talked about the importance of historic trails, and I definitely agree with you. I'm also very excited about historic trails. This particular set of projects, the Priority Multimodal Network, is really looking not at the historic trails, but at the critical gaps in our transit system and in our bike and pedestrian system along state highways. So there may be opportunities where historic trails may intersect or come up to the state highway system, but not that it's not important, but they're not part of the critical gaps that this particular network is trying to fill. But yeah, thank you for raising that point. And then we just want to acknowledge that your agreement with James Kong's former or prior question and comment about possible, I guess, better options in harbors. We'll pass that along to our harbors team and have a bigger discussion about that. So thank you for all of your points tonight. And I know that there's a comment from Margaret, I'm sorry, from Meredith in the chat, connecting your comment to those who are working on a historic trail along the Kohala side. So thanks for making that connection to Margaret, Meredith. Any other questions or comments from the group? Noel? Please feel free to unmute and come on video and ask your question or comment.
Can you hear me okay?
We can. Thanks, Noel.
First of all, mahalo for facilitating this conversation, sharing the plans and enabling community feedback. I joined late, so I don't want to make a comment or a question about something that may have already been covered. But I heard through the conversation that there are all these different. So this focuses on the multimodal strategy, right? The plans here, and but there are others. Right, when we talk about the electrification of transportation, you've got state, you've got, private sector, et cetera. There's the mass transit strategy. And then there's also, I believe, a need for us to figure out how we can encourage the development of communities that are more self-contained, right? Like communities where you don't actually have to travel to get to essentials. So my question is more about this, how we as a state are addressing the development of all these different solutions to address a variety of issues that are all interrelated. How are we organizing or having those conversations so we're looking at it from a systems perspective? Like, what we're doing in multimodal, how does that impact the need for passenger vehicle and or electric vehicles, and how are we kind of connecting the dots with regard to the investments that are required? So in other words, how are we coordinating all these different efforts? Is there such a thing? And if so, who is actually involved? Maybe it's not a fair question because it's probably a multi-agency responsibility. But I'm just curious about how that's being managed or how we're viewing that, given the magnitude of the issue, the magnitude of the investment, and the fact that they're all interrelated.
Sure. Thanks for your question, Noel. I can maybe try a response, and then Larry and Zach from the county or anyone on our team, feel free to join us in as well. I think you're absolutely right, Noel, that we do have all these strategies to have a healthier environment, better community, safer, more connected communities across all islands. And I think one of the big pushes right now from HDOT is improving our infrastructure that will then support all of our emissions reduction strategies moving forward. So this priority multimodal network, it makes sense to have these bigger conversations, right? There's lots of questions about transit, about NEVI charging, and they are all interrelated. I think we absolutely want to fill the critical gap so that we do give people options, cleaner and more affordable options for transportation. And then I think there, as we're looking at this system, we are absolutely thinking about it in terms of where our charging stations are going. So you heard Zach talking about the county focus on transit hubs and being able to charge at those transit hubs, which makes a lot of sense, right? So in terms of, I guess I don't want it to seem like the efforts are disjointed, because it is really strategic in filling the critical gaps now, to give people those options. I would say another critical gap is absolutely the electric vehicle charging, being able to provide that baseline infrastructure that can then give people options in terms of what vehicles they choose. So that's really the focus, I think, across the board, whether we're talking multimodal or electric vehicles, is being able to provide those that baseline infrastructure that gives people those affordable and cleaner options. Maybe Larry, did you want to offer a response as well?
I can maybe add a little bit to that. You bring up a good point, Noel, is that, what we're talking about tonight is multimodal transportation, bikes and pedestrians and transit, and that's certainly a key feature in addressing the issues you're talking about. I also, I'm the highways administrator, so I come from the highways perspective of DOT, and I think it's obvious that the highways division today is much different than it was 50 years ago. We were focused on cars 50 years ago, moving as many cars as fast as we could. Obviously, that's changed a lot, and so I think we are molding ourselves in recognition of those changes. That we're serving a lot of different customers now that we serve in our system with all these different modes. And who would have thought that we'd be installing electric chargers for vehicles? But that's certainly something that we see is within our scope of work now. I think you brought up a great point, and one of the big issues to face in addressing these things is land use. And we're not a land use jurisdiction agency. However, we are working with those. That's the city and the county planning departments basically, and the state land use commission. And when we communicate with them now about projects of which they have jurisdiction, we include comments about things that we can include transit-oriented development, for instance, and we support that effort. We support communities where they provide opportunities for work near their residential areas. So that cuts down on commuting things when they provide commercial opportunities, shopping opportunities in a close vicinity to those. But that's where we're a supporting agency, but we're a stakeholder. So that's a good point, and we are focused on primarily on the things where they're primary mover, and that's moving people and goods. But looking at ways that we can do that in a manner that supports a healthy lifestyle, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So yeah, thanks for your point. I think I talk to our planning agencies fairly regularly, it seems, and I tell them, transportation or infrastructure should follow land use. Land use shouldn't follow infrastructure. So while we're a significant supporting agency and stakeholder in land use, we're not the primary agency, but we support their efforts and follow their lead when it comes to that sort of thing, because I agree with you that a big solution to those issues is having good land use policy and minimizing those commute times to keep traffic off the road. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Yeah, and all of these issues that you're flagging are all top strategies in our energy security and waste reduction plan, which we'll be working from as a guiding document in the years to come. So I'll put that in chat as well, but really appreciate your perspective, Noel. I see another hand raised from James Kong. Is that from before or a new question, James?
This is a new one.
Go ahead.
Well, I noticed that in town there are a lot of hedges that are overgrown and they encroach into the easement. So I'm just wondering if you can get the state workers to cut down those hedges because it interferes with pedestrian walkways. And another thing that you could probably do, I'm sure there's technology for that, but could like anytime you survey a property, could you get the surveyors to install RFID chips in the property pins, like in a plastic cap that goes over a property pin, so that it makes it easier to identify where the property line is? So it makes it easier for the maintenance people to identify if plants are encroaching on the property or, things like that. And also, well, this is another total question, but I noticed that the bus stops by Mud Lane, one of them was caught in an accident, is totally destroyed, never been replaced. This is over 10 years now. And the other one, the glass panels or plastic panels have totally been blown out by vandals. So, it's just only a roof over the head. And Waimea is known for its rain and clouds and stuff like that. But it would be nice if the county or the state could get those bus stops repaired. And
Okay.
that's it.
Thanks, James. Okay, so I think we have 4 things there. So hedges, the ID chips. Maybe we'll go to Larry for those, and then we'll go to the county for the bus stops. Larry?
Yeah, James, thanks for bringing those up. With regards to overgrown vegetation encroaching into the right-of-way or on sidewalks, I would encourage you to call, if you have specific instances of that are a concern, to call the local Hawai'i district office of the Department of Transportation, and they can get their maintenance crews out there to address that. But I will, as a general comment, let them know that comment came up in tonight's conversation and ask their crews to be on the lookout for those areas. But for specifics, again, please feel free to contact their office and they will get their maintenance crews to address that. Regarding the RFIDs, that's an interesting idea. I can tell you though, we don't do a lot of surveying of property corners at the DOT. That's not really part of what we do. We do surveying to establish survey monuments along our routes, but that wouldn't be surveying of property corners. So I'm not sure who other than the property surveyors, the private surveyors, that would do that sort of a thing. But interesting idea though.
Would it be like could you make it like a mandatory law that you have to install a chip when property is being sold, especially on the state highways along it?
Well, we don't use those property corners. We use our survey monuments that we establish in the highway routes. So those corners are not something that we really use to establish our
Well,
alignments and check our work.
yeah, yeah. Well, see, the question about that is like, a state just acquired all belt roads, and a lot of them in Waimea have been paved over by the county before it was transferred to the state. And a lot of the fire hydrant cutoff valves and the markers, like you said, have been covered, but have not been opened up again. So you can't identify any of those things.
Okay, so if you're referring to the street centerline monuments on the county roads,
Well,
you know,
this
we
is
don't
a state
use.
highway, Malamalahu Highway. They paved the road and they never exposed the fire hydrant cutoffs and those markers again. So I don't know. You'd have to get a metal detector to find out the things like that.
Okay, so are they saying they paved over the gate valves, the valve covers on the water valves?
Right.
Okay, and that's on Mamalawa Highway.
Right.
Okay,
This is from like the 55-mile marker to town, the 57-mile marker.
Okay.
Well, actually, I'm sorry, 56-mile marker.
Okay, so we've got that noted. We'll follow up with the Hawaii District Office about that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah. The board of water supply is supposed to have,
Yes.
opened it up.
Okay, thanks, Larry. James, we did put our Hawaii District Engineer's contact information or the district office information in the chat. And then regarding the bus stop by Mud Lane, Zach, do you mind giving a response?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. James, so yeah, I got that one. We'll look at the one at Mud Lane, right at Old Mamalahoa Highway, right? That's the one you're referring to.
Yeah, it's the one to Lakeland. One on Lakeland side and one on Mud Lane side.
Okay, I see it. On the left-hand side, there is a shelter. On the right-hand side, going into Waimea, it's removed or taken out, like you said. Yeah, we'll talk with the agency. That's a state roadway, so we got to talk with the state. But I got that one, so thank you for that. And what glass panel that got busted out are you talking about? What stop was that one?
The one right across the street from the Mud Lane one.
Right across the street. So the multiple glass panels?
All of them.
Okay. Okay. We got a crew. We can get that done.
And there's the one by Ace Hardware too that has a few missing panels.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, James. I'll address that with everybody when I get back tomorrow.
Thanks, Zach, and thank you, James. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? I know we're just a couple minutes away from our time here tonight. If not, I'll turn back over to Natasha and Larry. Natasha?
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to thank everybody for coming out, and thank you to Larry and Rachel and our county partners, Melanie and Zach, for being on this call. And I'll let Larry have the last few words.
Thanks, Natasha, and thank you, Laura. And thank you, everybody attending tonight. Your comments are vital to the success of our project, so we really appreciate your coming out tonight and giving us your feedback, thoughts, comments, and suggestions. They're incredibly important to our success. Thank you very much, and aloha.
Mahalo.
Mahalo, everyone.